Vergil Ortiz knocks out Erickson Lubin in 2 rounds. I gave him an A plus last night. Got to hear what you think. I already said a lot of what I thought last night, but just to recap, what really impressed me about Ortiz's performance, and again, I'll acknowledge the perspective of don't. What are you getting so excited about? A plus for what? He did in 2 rounds what Jermell Charlo did 8 years ago in 1 round. Luben doesn't have punch resistance anymore. He's half of a shot fighter. What's the big deal? Well, to that point, what was impressive to me was Luben. This was his Super Bowl. This was a veteran who was still just 30 years old and believed third time's the charm. This third bite at the apple is the night I get over. Luben was a thoroughbred in the amateurs who has always believed it's his destiny to be world champion. He was the prospect of the year almost a decade ago. So he felt like this is the time it finally happens for me through the hard road I've traveled. And by the end of the first round and well into the second round for sure, I saw Ortiz convince a veteran who was completely convinced tonight was going to be his night. In less than 5 minutes, convince him it's not your night. And Luben, he knew he was up against a ferocious fighter, a pressure fighter, a guy with power who was dangerous and relentless. He found out quickly in that fight, this guy is even better than I thought he was. He's harder to hit than I thought he was. He's more skilled and faster than I thought he was. And that's what impressed me a lot last night about Ortiz is he quickly convinced a very confident fighter who came in with the mariachi and the sombrero, it ain't your night. You got nothing for me. Well, what'd you think about everything, Raheem?
Ortiz going in's the favorite. Clearly. You're right. 8 years ago, Luben goes down in the first. You could say at that point he's done. I wouldn't have said that then. I was expecting more of a fight from Luben, but it wasn't because, at least in my estimation of the 5 minutes that we got to see of him, it wasn't necessarily because he's a washed fighter. It was because he was met in the ring with someone who was so simplistic in the one sense in what his approach was to the fight, and yet so dominant and unrelenting that there was no room for Luben to maneuver inside that dynamic. He would have to figure something out, and he had no time to put it together. I think in this as in this situation, the ironic part of it is that he was confused by the simplicity. There was really nothing for him to do with the way Ortiz set the table. That high guard, that just, and the pressure wasn't even, I'm the guy who's like, be behind the jab, be first, stay in his chest. We were just talking to Sean Porter briefly before this thing. I mean, I'm like, that's my kind of pressure. This wasn't quite that. This was like, when you say you walk somebody down, he really was walking him down. And when they decided that this wasn't going to be a foot fest of boxing on the outside, there was nothing Lubin could do but try to fight Ortiz's fight. And you see how short that made the fight itself. I was impressed with the patience of Ortiz. In the corner between round one and two, you could hear Garcia tell him, hey, you don't have to rush. You be chill. I didn't think he was rushing. I think he was immediately breaking down his fighter and watching the guy deconstruct. He was just pushing the gas because he was getting the distance. It was such a beautiful way to see the next matchup. And that's no disrespect to Lumen. Like I said, I still don't think I forget which one of the broadcasters said this, but at the end of the fight, somebody said, and Luben is a washed fighter or something like this. Like, I didn't find that to be. I thought that was a little tacky. I thought that was a little tasteless, and I didn't agree. I think Ortiz gave us a glimpse of what we'll see against Ennis, and made me want that matchup more. Like in boxing, they always do this dynamic. Okay, the two guys are gonna meet. Neither one of them really have the big kind of draw that you want to make it a super fight. They put another fight in front of the big fight so they can build the big fight, and then hopefully each fighter gets to showcase what they do best, and it makes the ultimate fight hotter. maybe works half the time because boxing gods have a sense of humor. In this case, it worked perfectly. It is exactly what we wanted to see from Ennis, and it's exactly what I wanted to see from Ortiz. We're about to have a classic Mexican versus Black American fighter. We're about to see that dynamic in the division where it is the most fun to watch, and both of these guys are coming in so stereotypical, if you will, that
Right.
I couldn't be more excited about it. I couldn't say that in a more excited and complimentary fashion. And don't forget, Sean Zattel is the one who put it down just a few weeks ago about the black fighter. If you haven't seen it, go check Sean Zattel's monologue about respect to that black American fighter. But the rivalry between the black American fighter and the Mexican or the Mexican American fighter is hallowed ground. It is etched in history, and I think we're on our way to seeing another classic in just that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, the facts are it's the top two countries that have produced the most world champions in the history of boxing. So it is, for all intents and purposes, the greatest rivalry in boxing. It's our Lakers Celtics. It's our Yankees Red Sox. Go Yankees, by the way. But salute to the Brooklyn Dodgers for back-to-back World Series. Since the Yankees don't like winning World Series no more, New Yorkers, we'll just take credit for the Dodgers now.
The Brooklyn Dodgers
The
is
Brooklyn
crazy
Dodgers.
work.
Jackie Robinson played in Brooklyn, Raheem. He didn't play in Los Angeles. No,
That's LA all day, bro. LA stand up. But you know what? Yes, respect to Brooklyn Dodgers. There's always going to be some Brooklyn in that LA heart out there.
you know what I'm saying? So, but
Yeah.
I want real quick. I want to give a moment for Luben because, like you said, washed fire and everything. To give credit to Ortiz, man, Luben, the scouting report on Luben coming out of the amateurs is that was always his Achilles heel, was his punch resistance, his chin. Remember, Charlo caught him cold in the first round. Ishe Smith was on his last legs as a pro. Luben, no, I got that wrong. Luben, I'm thinking of Ishe Smith against other fighters. He dispatched of Ishe quickly, but point being, Luben's always been chinny, and that's not a new a vulnerability he has that Ortiz is only pouncing on as he's gotten older and been stopped a few times. That's always been Luben. But I feel for Luben because this is one of those thoroughbreds, Raheem. He started boxing at a young age. He won every national tournament there was. He came out, was the prospect of the year. That's why he bit off more than he could chew with Charlo at 22 because he was the goods. He was checking all the boxes, and he showed tremendous heart in that Fundora fight 3 years ago. Tremendous heart, as much heart as you could show. And it's not for a lack of skill. It's not that he's feather fisted. He has good, decent pop. He's a good southpaw boxer. He's like Obakar, he's just coming around. Remember Obakar back in the day couldn't get his hands on a title. The guy could fight his ass off. Obakar was a great amateur. I just want to salute these guys who fall short of the championship level. They can fight. There's tens of thousands of professional fighters out there, and only a very few of them get to be a champion. And Luben, his entire existence as a fighter, believed he without a shadow of a doubt in his mind, he believed he was going to be champion. It looks like he never will. But I want to salute him as still a very good fighter in his own right. And I feel for him a little bit.
And just to tack on to that, in this four belt era, some might say five belt era,
Six belt era.
six belt era, we have a tendency to dismiss certain titles, or depending on how many people have it in one division, or there's only one real champion. Well, there may be one champion of champions, and if you become undisputed, well, then obviously you deserve that moniker. But anybody who wins a belt, especially if they win it in the ring, even if they get elevated to a title, it's hallowed ground.
Mm-hmm.
There's like we get spoiled and we get a little bit over our skis just dismissing people's accomplishments and not really respecting how hard it is to be a champion in boxing. No matter how many belts or what era you're in, it's hard to get your hands on that hardware. And everybody doesn't get the same shot, and it's not fair. And there's no specific track to it. And you don't always meet the moment when it comes to you. And sometimes you're the better fighter, but not the better man on the night. And a lot of guys who have been great at times weren't great in the moment, and names won't be etched in history as champions and sometimes forgotten when really they should be remembered. So those guys who did get their hands on some hardware, those guys who are in the history books as champion, there's a little respect at least on every name, no matter what belt it was or what era it was. Being a world champion in boxing is a damn hard thing to do. Luben is an example of that, and I feel for him too, you know. And I don't think he's washed. I don't think that necessarily he'll never get another crack at it, but he's an example of how good you can be and still not be quite good enough.
Yeah, and look at the three title shots he got. It was Fundora, who's a monster, 6'6", Charlo, who became one of the most decorated 54s actually in the history of the sport, and then Vergil, who's a fucking killer. So it's not like look at Keyshawn and Shakur, for example, who are better than Erickson Lubin. I'm not trying to split hairs here, but they got to fight Joet Gonzalez and Denis Berancek for their first title fights. This dude had to fight three killers every bite at the apple. So, just salute to Lubin on that. About Ortiz, though, Raheem, I want to get your take on this. He is one of the most ferocious and intense and mean, spiteful fighters, I think, today in boxing. He has a great game face. He wears that scowl into the ring. What do you think of that? Do you think he's one of the meanest dudes in the ring right now in the game?
In the post fight, face to face, it was a bit cringe, as they say on the British side of the pond,
Why was it cringe?
because I saw Ennis performing and I saw Ortiz trying to make a moment, and neither one of them was really authentic. I don't think Ortiz is a nasty or mean guy. I think he's a
Not out of
killer
the ring, no.
in the ring.
Yeah.
He's about his business and getting that stoppage and putting you down when it comes time to handle the work. But outside the ring, I think he's a nice guy. I don't think there's any real animosity between the two of them. I think they're up there performing, and neither of them are good actors. I don't like the flashy, the attitude that a lot of black fighters feel like they have to have. Like some might call it swag. If it's natural, great. If that's what you are and who you are, fantastic. I think after Ennis' last fight with Stanionis, that actually felt more real. I think in the moment after the fight, I felt it a little bit more genuine. But this forced moment, Boots, come over here. They knew what they had to do, and it felt like they were doing something that wasn't real. And both of these guys are so good, and this fight is going to be so real, and the matchup is so iconic in history of the two different cultures clashing, that just be yourself. That's enough. Just who is trash talking who on the internet and all that shit. That's not interesting. Talk about how this fight is going to go because of what you're going to bring. You can respect each other. You can absolutely stand nose to nose and let the other guy know that you're in charge. I want to see the energy. I don't want to hear the script. And that's all I'm saying about last night that was cringe. The energy was off because they were so busy trying to read from the script.
Well, okay. All right. You saying it's cringe makes me bring up my own critique of the exchange. And that's, I felt some PR spin in that exchange. I felt a little bit from Timor, from Vergil. Wait a minute. You had your shot. We tried to negotiate with you before. You said, and they're leaving the door open to explore other options, Team Ortiz. And that's why when you said earlier, this is going to be another great chapter in the Black American versus Mexican fighter thing, I made a face like, eh. And the face wasn't because I don't think you're right and 100% correct in your assessment that if they fight, it would add on to that pantheon, no question about it. But I question, is it really going to happen next? And part of why is Boots reportedly turned down the fight before. It was going to be funded by Turkey. And Eddie Hearn, we talked about this earlier on previous videos. Hearn seems to want to keep Ennis over here. This is my gem over here. This is my thing. This is my independent hustle for Matchroom. I got big plans for him. I don't necessarily want to funnel him to your system, Turkey, because this is my guy. I see big things with him, big plans. And so it sounds like Eddie might be trying to make the fight happen in America between himself and Golden Boy. Golden Boy's not going to go for that. They're going to go, no. You turned it down. It was for this number with Turkey. Now you pull up at the fight and you want it to happen for this number in America, I can get behind Hearn's sentiment. Hey, let's eat what we kill. Me and Oscar, let's talk a bunch of shit. Let's have our guys sell the fight. Let's put the fight on in the States. We'll eat what we'll kill. We'll all do our job and promote it. And, and Team Ortiz is going, the number was a lot bigger when Turkey was backing it. But here's the thing. See, if a fight like that is a fight that Turkey's positioning to be with his new TKO thing, like Shakur and Tiafimo, right? Everyone's reporting that that could be kind of what Canelo Crawford was, although we're getting conflicting reports. Now we're hearing it might just be a DAZN fight, which would mean nothing to do with, Dana and TKO. Point being, Team Ortiz is going to want the Turkey money to get in the ring with Ennis. And if Hearn, for whatever reason, is trying to just do the fight Golden Boy matchroom and we eat what we kill, they're not going to go for that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ortiz winds up fighting Fundora, which kind of is a fight that should happen next because he's the interim champion. Fundora's the full champion. Look, if we could have Ortiz Ennis next, bring it on, because in boxing you only get these windows to realistically make a big fight. And if you don't make it when the windows present themselves, it probably never happens. So, because in an ideal world, I want Boots to fight Bakram, and I want Vergil to have that Fundora fight, and then they could fight for all the marbles. But if you got a chance to make it now, you got to make it now. But what do you think of all that, Raheem? Is it really going to happen next?
The politics of boxing will never, ever be just black and white. It's always going to be some behind the back, in the back room, off the record type of shenanigans. The way that right now the talent pool is being allocated to different people's agendas, where it used to be network division, used to be promoter infighting that would prevent us from getting fights. Now, we're not talking about whether or not we get the fight necessarily. We're talking about where we get the fight and which fighters go to which system. I don't think you're wrong at all in what Eddie Hearn has in mind for Ennis. He is Ennis being Matchroom's American flagship. That's what Matchroom USA is meant to be built off the back of. Boots Ennis. He does not want to feed Ennis to a Saudi card. He doesn't want Ennis fighting outside the states. And right now, he's building him in Philly. Like, he is not interested in taking him even to London. So you're exactly right in that. And I think the linchpin here will be Golden Boy. We'll find out where Golden Boy is at. If Oscar's a real promoter or if he's now just happy to get as much money as he can from Turkey. That is the real question. Are there going to be American and British promoters who are able to work together outside of the Zuffa system that's coming and outside of the Riyadh season that's papering all these shows and eat what they kill, work together to do something that creates American boxing back at a level that we once saw it in a past era and supports British boxing, which really brought all this Turkey stuff to the fold in the first place. Without British boxing having been built to where it was, Saudi Arabia wouldn't be in the game.
And Daniel Kinahan.
You know, yeah, and every turn you see some nefarious characters in boxing. That goes back to the beginning of time. However, right now is a crucial moment. Do these promoters really want to be promoters, or do they want to be bankers? Do they just want to be money changers? This is what is the fundamental question as to what is going to happen in this next era of boxing and where these shows are going to go. I think Eddie Hearn has enough ego and pride and family history and desire to define himself in America, which he knows he hasn't done nearly to the level that his ambition would require, to fight against the big check and say we're building something here. Don't take the money and send your fighter to Riyadh season when we can build superstars here and have our own system to compete with Dana. That's what all that Dana and Eddie Hearn back and forth is, because that American turf is still very valuable. And as soon as the next era of boxing becomes popular in the States again, like it was just a minute ago, there's going to be no place you want to be a bigger star than America. I don't care how much money you're getting in Riyadh. I don't care what kind of deal Zuffa has. You want to be the guy in the States that's thought of as the guy. There's still no better place to be a superstar than America. And this is going to be whether American promoters still believe in the American dream.
Yeah, because exactly, and not just okay, but not just the promoters, the fighters. See, if Vergil Ortiz is saying, no, 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 I don't, I get it. I don't want to fight you for this number when you turn down the fight for this number. And I don't give a shit if we fight in your grandmother's backyard or in Yugoslavia or in Riyadh. Fighters, it's what Floyd say. It's called prize fighting. You fight for a prize. I'm like, okay, fine, I get it. But at the end of the day, you're not politicians. It's not your job as a fighter. You have to have tunnel vision, be in the gym as often as possible. You don't got time to watch CNN and political channels on YouTube and all this shit. I get it. And I don't watch CNN either, by the way. But I was just trying to think of a network right off of. But if you, point being, you're still an adult and you still have to be responsible at some level for understanding how the world is operating around you, for understanding the stakes for your country and what implications your personal decisions may or may not have on your country, as small and as insignificant as it may seem, just being a fighter in the gym. So, yeah, the promoters got to still believe in the American dream. The fighters do too. They got to have some code. They got to have a desire to, hey, Sean and Raheem, they got to eat what they kill. So you're no different. You should, as a man, want to find out what you're really worth. But if, as a man, you want to go to the highest bidder and make the most money, I don't want to pretend I don't understand that logic. I certainly do. But I'm just putting it on the fighters, too. It's not just on the promoters. The fighters, too, I get it. They're the ones risking their lives. They got to fight for a prize. But you're also adults, and you're responsible for this stuff, too.
But it's up to the promoter to have the vision. The fighter
Yeah,
makes
for
the
sure.
ultimate choice. Of course, a fighter can have vision himself as well. But part of what makes a promoter even worth having at all
Right,
is yes, they're meant to promote you
right.
and advise you in the best way to promote yourself. The short money isn't always the best money. It might be the most money, but not the best money. If a fighter can trust his promoter's vision, trust the machine that the promoter has to operate, see the big picture, see the long term. Yeah, is it better to get a check maybe 2 times what you're going to get on your next fight or fight 4 times and be the biggest boxing star in America? Now that might bring a whole pantheon of checks from different avenues and make you a legend in the sport, or you can be a role player at the hands and the mercy of a different system and not be able to leverage that into anything except for whatever that system says and dictates you get next. That makes the promoter that you sign with just a money changer. And I don't think Eddie Hearn's into that, and I don't know if Oscar is, but we're about to find out.
So for the fight itself, Ortiz and Ennis, I had one comment on the channel because I lean towards Ennis, but Ortiz looked dynamite last night, and Ortiz is more fundamentally sound than Ennis. And someone goes, oh well, that was a talking point a lot of people said about Spence and Crawford. Spence is more fundamentally sound. I picked Crawford to knock out Spence, and to that train of thought, I say this. Boots, as talented as he isn't Terrence Crawford. I'll make the comparison again. Terrence Crawford is Kobe Bryant. Boots Ennis is Vince Carter. All right, they're both the same height. If you watch the highlight reel might even be a little saucier for Vince than it is Kobe. But people who know that comparison know what I'm getting at when I make that example between the two of them. And Errol Spence, look, Ortiz hasn't won a full world title yet. Spence won 3. Ortiz is better than Errol Spence. He has a level of hand speed and velocity to his offense that Spence didn't have. Spence wasn't slow, but he wasn't a quick twitch guy either. And I think Ortiz keeps it a little tighter defensively and has a little bit better reaction times. There was 2 or 3 counters Ortiz had that I swear caught Luben off guard. Like, oh, I didn't know he was moving and reacting like that. That guy's sharp. He's quick with his reaction time. So it ain't the same thing. Ennis ain't Crawford, respectfully. And Ortiz, to eye test wise, is better than Spence. And I think Ennis better tighten some things up for that assignment, Raheem. What do you
Roy
think?
Jones has recently said, and probably before now even repeated, the fundamentals are what allow you to do the sensational.
Right.
When you see him, and I mean Roy, in there doing what seems impossible, angles that don't make sense, throwing punches where how could you get leverage on that shot, knocking guys out with punches not only the fighter didn't see coming, but the audience didn't even see it coming. How do you get to be that kind of guy, the flashy guy that is able to do things circus style in there and still be incredibly effective? Well, you can do that early in your career and certainly amateurs if you're just a superior athlete. You have God-given natural talent. You have work ethic. You can flout the foundation of your training and really showboat and showcase and be fantastically entertaining for a while. But if it's not built on a solid foundation of fundamentals, if that's not where all of it is organically coming from and sprouting from, it's a fighter like Vergil Ortiz that will find you out. You will not be able to produce those kind of outcomes with that sensational style if it's not rooted in your fundamental skills and absolute technique that is so polished, that is so ingrained that you're playing jazz in there, but you still read music, which is why you can do all the things inside the notes. And that's what we're about to find out about Boots Ennis. That's what I can't wait for this class to produce. And if he is that guy, if he is the guy that, has those fundamentals down and is working from that premise, then I got Boots.
Yeah.
Because in that matchup, that guy that Jaron Ennis wins this iconic rivalry. That's I bet the house on that.
Right.
But if there's cracks in that foundation, if it ain't a secure one, if he's a little too cute by half, Boots Ennis is gonna get exposed. Vergil Ortiz has the ability to do that. On the night, we're gonna find out a lot about both of these guys. However, what you're getting from Ortiz, I think you get what you see. You see what you get. We know what that is. And then the question is, if he can make what that is expose what this is. And if it ain't on Boots' side, porous or cracked foundation or a lot of showmanship, but not a lot of fundamentals, if it ain't that, Boots is taking this fight and Ortiz is going to look good losing, but he won't win it.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Lima knockout. He does a shot, and again, to your point, you got to have the skill and timing and the understanding of distance to take this huge gamble that he took. But remember, he threw this huge right uppercut from a distance most fighters would never throw an uppercut from, and his chin's almost over his front foot, and he's completely exposed. And you could see Vergil, just keeping it tight against those wider athletic shots, keep it tight, and then boom, everything compact, catching in between. But to your point, man, if Ennis has the steak to go with the sizzle,
that's it.
You're not beating that guy. You're not beating that guy. If he's got the substance to go with all that sauce and all those different maneuvers and both stances, and good luck. And Ennis is showing us he probably has a good chin. I say probably because who's he been cracked by? Clean. But still, he wears shots too clean and takes them well. So maybe he also takes a good shot too. I'm with you. If Ennis has the substance to go with all his talent, then he'll win the fight. But if there's any cracks in there whatsoever, because we can't underestimate Ortiz's talent, and his velocity is underrated. When you fight in that high guard, people don't think speed and athleticism, and he actually possesses those things. It's a great matchup, man. I will give the edge to Ennis, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ortiz cleans his clock, let alone beats him. So it's a great matchup.
Shout out to Errol Spence, who was in the building last night. It was good to see him. I wasn't there. I saw him in post-fight interviews and such. It's good to see him. I'd like to see him in the ring again. If you had asked me before Saturday, I'm like, let Errol chill, right? Let's let that sleeping dog lie. But seeing him again and knowing this division is heating up, and I think maybe he's got more to offer. I was also really, I didn't like the and Luben is a washed fighter. I just that hit me wrong, and it made me think of sometimes I've been a little bit hyperbolic in the moment and ready to just write a guy off. These guys are exceptional, man. They have something that none of us who don't do
But I don't
this
know if
have.
Luben should be taking punches anymore. Same thing with Spence. It's not that they can't still fight. It's that it's what's coming back is too much of an issue at this stage for them.
At a certain level.
Yeah.
But I'm not prepared to say I don't want to see them fight again at all. That there's nothing out there for them in the sport.
But those
That
guys are wired to go for the title or go for nothing at all. So if they
yeah.
can't fight at that level, I don't, you know.
Well, they may not be able to beat everybody at that level, but if they get back fighting, those are the kind of guys. And well, I'm talking about Errol Spence now. Errol Spence is the kind of guy I believe that can find his way back to a title. I don't know exactly who that is going to be. We'd have to see him back and what he's got, but I think his personal life, and then of course the Crawford destruction, really maybe set him back mentally and made him think the way that you're talking. But when I seen him at the, I was like, nah, there's still something there.
Okay.
And if he wants it, I think there's something for him to come get.
The problem is, I think, for a guy like Spence is there isn't this ability to do what George Foreman did in the late '80s, and that's get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fights under your belt against whoever, wherever, just to
Mm.
get just to get yourself the engine going again before you fight a guy in the top 10. That just doesn't exist anymore. You get maybe one tune-up, and then it's like, all right, we got to put you in a significant fight because we only got so many dates with the network and everything. And so that's what I would like for a guy like Spence is fight in Texas, promote the own show if you want. Who cares who the opponent is? Just get some fights under your belt and see where you're at in this thing in the ring,
Yes.
you know? But
Yes.
that landscape doesn't exist for fighters anymore.